From Florida's Space Coast, this is Your Career.
Welcome to Your Career. I'm Debbie Featherston, your host, and with me today is Tim Reynolds. Tim, thank you for being with me. I know you are co-owner of Wild Manta, and one thing that I know people locally will know about you, but those that are new to you and to what you do won't know, is that you are very passionate about building and growing thriving businesses. Where does that come from?
That's true. Some would call it a passion. My wife would probably call it an addiction. There's just something magical about that new start business. There's an excitement. There's a long-term vision. There's something that's addictive about that. But a lot of people will say this in the industry where you're helping people is I've made a lot of mistakes. I've built up companies. I've sold companies. I've done the good things, and I've done the things that I will share with people that'll never show up in a paper. But it's that experience, and also building products. Between myself and my team, we've built a couple of hundred products.
Wow. So
that has allowed us to know the cycle and know what to do when you go to build a product.
And that's really a key part of what you're doing right now. Is you're really working with businesses that have products predominantly. Is that right? That
is true. And one of the things that we noticed over the years in developing products, and I've been developing products for companies and for people for close to 20 years now, is it isn't always about the product. A lot of times it's about the culture of the company that you're trying to create. And that's actually one of the pivotal things at Wild Manta that we like to focus on. It isn't just the thing. Somebody once told me there was really three elements to a business, and that's true. There is the thing, then there's the business of the business, the culture you're trying to create, the business model that you have to build it around, and then there's the compliance elements. What do I have to do from a regulatory perspective, from a testing perspective, and all of that makes a whole company. So that's really what we try to focus on.
So you're looking at the big picture, I mean the whole package from A to Z,
Absolutely.
Right?
And not just the one product. The ideal company for us, we'll work with them to develop not just one product, but a product line or a multi-year roadmap for those products so that they aren't just a one product company. And that's really, when we try to create a sustainable company, we're really trying to focus on things that will have long-reaching effect and can go on for a decade or more in new products.
What are some of the typical challenges that you find these business owners, or sometimes I would imagine they're more, they're coming to you with a concept of a product, and so they're not yet truly a business owner?
Well, it's actually just the opposite. Most of the people that walk in, the first statement out of their mouth was, "I've got 1,000 ideas."
Oh.
And we go, "Oh my, well, let's focus on one." So it's actually a lack of focus that actually is a challenge for a new start entrepreneur, somebody who has an inventive mind. So it's getting them to focus on the one long enough and detailed enough to actually create a company out of it. And that's one of the things that one of the very first things when we start talking to a company is, let's get down to one, maybe two products, or if we can turn them into a product line. For example, we work with a company that works, he came in with a product, but in reality, he's going to be a outdoor products company. So we put a lot of his ideas together into a roadmap that goes out 3 to 5 years. So that's the type of person we're looking for, somebody who isn't just about one product, but can create that long-term multi-product company.
So when you're getting involved with these individuals, as you said, it's not just coaching, and I hear that loud and clear, because you're going from concept, but you're also strategic planning. You're looking at the culture and the sustainability. You're looking at the profit margins. You're looking at who's the target customer. Maybe there's a distribution. I mean, there's multiple aspects here.
So when somebody starts a company, and we're really focused on companies that are producing a tangible product. That's really what we're focusing on now. We also want to build the community. So we are selective about the companies that we work with so that we are creating industries within our community that are building a tangible product, and it's across the spectrum from high tech to very low tech. So it employs a broad base, and then we export that product from the area. So we're really building the economy, we're building the entrepreneur, we're building a labor base. So that creates a healthy community.
Yeah.
So we really don't deal a lot with people who say, I just want to build my idea up big enough to sell it to somebody, because that's a personal gain.
Yeah.
That's not a community gain. So we really focus on the community gain.
And part of what you're doing is with the community gain is, again, it's how do they grow that business so that there may be more jobs in the community, so there's revenue here, that there's, you know, you get that.
So that's the sustainability aspect of it. So when we interview somebody to begin with and we talk to them about their goals, their personal goals, whether they see themselves running or being a participant in a multi-million-dollar, 100-person plus company, you really look at their face and either they get excited about that or they get scared about it.
Yeah.
And you really want to work with them and say, if this isn't something for you, maybe your idea is bigger than you, and maybe you need to find a partner or somebody to work with, and then we help them build upon that. Some people just want a hobby.
Yeah.
If they want a hobby, that's not the type of businesses that we work with.
Right.
But if they want to grow it to a multi-million-dollar business, want to employ people, that's the infrastructure that we're trying to create.
Yeah. And there's all kinds of solutions to get somebody at the top if they're not getting excited, if they're afraid of being the leader of a multi-million-dollar business.
Absolutely, and knowing their strength is another aspect that we work with them on. So if you're not strong at going out and doing the foot on the ground marketing, then that's the person that we look for. If you're great at sales, we've got a customer right now that's absolutely fantastic at sales, but needs a bookkeeper. Absolutely, you don't want him doing the bookkeeping. So,
yeah, definitely.
And so it's knowing that you aren't all the answer. It's very rare that one person can be 360 degrees, can be the entire solution. So knowing that I'm not, knowing the role that I fit in, and be willing to recruit those people at the appropriate time is an important aspect, both in the growth of the company and in securing any level of investment in the company, because investors will immediately see your strength, look for those weaknesses, and say, are you prepared to hire people for those weaknesses? And
I'm assuming that's another dimension of what you're able to help them, is to find investors when they're ready.
That's another important part about what we're trying to do, and is an important part of any business. So what we counsel people on is, think about your business as an investment. So when you create that business, you're creating an investment. So every dollar you put into it, the current ratio is you should be creating $3 to $5 in value in your business for every dollar that you put in it. That's the growth rate. So when you're spending money in your business, when you're spending time in your business, the question is, are you creating value?
Yeah.
And if you can document that value, if you can build that value over time, then when it comes time for the investment, the biggest thing people debate about is, what's the value of the company? You have the value of the company. You've shown where you've grown. You're focused. So that when people say, well, I want to get an investment, it starts way back when you created the company. You can't fabricate that information just because you now need investment.
Absolutely, and they're going to look back over, any investor's going to look back. Yeah, absolutely. They want to see that trend and that pattern. And
so one of the things that we're trying to do is, as a byproduct of the process that we take people through, it creates documented value, which means when they get to the point of having or needing investment, they can have a defendable valuation.
Right. That's a great way to say it. Absolutely. Are there other challenges that these upstarts might or startups might be experiencing?
A lot of them is focus, and then the next element is actually defining the path to creating that product. If they're into marketing, automatically they're out trying to sell it, and they kind of ignore the manufacturing aspect of it or the design aspect of it. If they're into engineering, they ignore the marketing and the branding aspect of it. So you really look and you try to assess what the person is. For us, it starts with the culture. If you build the culture, you build the brand. If you build the brand, the product is a byproduct of the brand. And what we call it, in the branding element that we work, that's called your promise. Your brand is your promise, and your product is a fulfillment of that promise. So when all of that lines up, the customer sees it, the investors see it, the buyers that you're trying to sell it to, if it's a product that's being distributed, see it. When that's disconnected, then it makes it a harder sell. So aligning those things based upon the strengths of the person that's going to be running the company is the biggest challenge.
You started to answer this question, but I'd like you to build on it. And based on your experience, Tim, what are the critical elements for really building or creating a sustainable company?
Perseverance. Absolutely, number one. You are going to knock on the front door and it's going to get slammed in your face. You're going to go around to the back door, you're going to go in the window, you're going to go down the chimney. There is no path that you're going to accept for failure. So perseverance. And the hardest thing for an inventor to do is, or an entrepreneur to do, is to have their idea talked down by somebody or chided or taken apart, and then to come back and do it the next day. So that perseverance is number one, and because you will run into people who absolutely think your idea is useless, other people that think it's great, and you'll deal with both in the same day. And I say that it's
Talk about
it's
a
like
roller coaster.
It is a roller coaster, and I say, and you're strapped to the front.
Oh no,
so
not
you
a
see
seat
every,
I like.
you see every high and every low,
Yeah.
and you might see them both in the same day.
Yeah, wow. So perseverance is one. Anything else that really is critical to that? The rest of it will come with the perseverance, I would imagine, because you're going to get educated, you're going to inform yourself.
The perseverance is the willingness to go educate yourself in areas that you're not familiar with. The perseverance, or the willingness also to acknowledge the fact that you're not the answer to every question, and to seek guidance in legal, patent, for example, or in corporate formation, so that that corporation is formed in a way that you can take on shareholders. So the willingness to take on that additional knowledge.
Tell me about, if you can, or to the extent that you can, because I know you've worked with a number of companies in helping them to create products. Can you give me an example of some of the types of products, anything that's through the patent, or able to tell us a little bit about some of them?
Well, we worked with a company called Uncle JJ Enterprises, which developed a insulated bait bucket, and it is a branding product. There are plenty of bait buckets out there. There are some insulated bait buckets out there. This is a unique product for the outdoorsman. The owner is a very good salesperson, so what he needed was technology. So we actually designed the product for him. We got it into manufacturing for him. So now he's building a brand around that product and has about 5 or 6 products that will come down the line as this product takes off. He's out around Florida today selling. He signed up about 60 resellers around Florida. So he's doing it the old-fashioned way. He's not relying on internet marketing. He's actually going out and signing up resellers. That's in contrast to a medical device that we work on that is a pill dispenser for hospitals. So that's for controlling opioids or pain medication at a hospital by the bedside. So that's not the same kind of sale. That's a very technical sale that has to be sold to hospitals, but we work in both of those.
And the other thing that I think about on that one is that there's a lot of regulations. And strict adherence that has to come into play when you're talking about medical devices, right?
Yes.
So that's huge. Anything else? I mean, those are two very good contrast, in terms of product lines.
Sure. We worked on a Bluetooth headset that was stereo, that went from 2 separate, one in the left ear, one in the right ear, totally wireless, stereo, allowed you to listen to your iTunes or whatever on the headset, but also acted as a wireless headset for your phone. So we worked on that. We worked on we're working with a customer right now on a pill organizer that actually has a heat sealer on it, so you can take pills and put them in it and sort them out for days of the week. So they vary all over the place on different customers. We work with about 30 different customers right now. Some are still going through the patent process, some are early. Most are still getting ready to go into production.
Okay. Oh, wow. Pretty good. Curious, Tim, in thinking about the people that you're working with, I mean, there's a lot of different personalities that you're working with, there's a lot of different temperament. Are you finding some that are less receptive or need a little more time to it? I'm just curious, if I'm thinking about, the types of people that you're targeting, right? Not just the companies, but the individuals that you're working with that are really going to be the drivers of those sustainable companies.
One of the biggest, I would say, stopping places is the shock and realization that it takes a substantial amount of money to create a business. The biggest shock is tooling. When somebody's doing something in plastic or they're doing something that requires physical tooling in order to fabricate the product, those costs are not inexpensive. They're not in the hundreds of dollars. Sometimes they're not even the thousands of dollars. They're in the tens of thousands of dollars. So sometimes the person is not prepared for that financially. They're not prepared for that because that's a big step, and it's a step that you have to be willing to take almost on a chance, because there is a possibility you could make a mistake. Now, is that product going to sell and pay back? So there's the thing that mainly will stop somebody in the path is one of the things like that, like the fabrication or a minimum buy on a product. So when you have a product fabricated, to get the cost way down, you have to buy a lot of it. Sometimes it's several hundred, sometimes it's several thousand, sometimes it's 10,000. And that cost also frightens people, because now they go, well, gee, what if it doesn't sell? So that's where this whole planning prior to this leads up to that. It's not a step of faith, it's just a plan. Our plan is how to get it to market.
Right. So that's where hopefully they're more at ease and more confident, because they have been systematically analyzing and working through this plan and looking at all the pieces of the puzzle.
And the important part is we've done this research ahead of time. We've done the market studies so that we know that if we can fabricate it for a particular price, that we believe it will sell, and we know what quantities we're in the markets that we're selling into. So nothing's for certain. But it is now an educated, process-based decision versus, gee, I like this product, I designed it, I had 10,000 made, and now how am I going to sell it?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's quite fascinating. Of course, I love entrepreneurs, so this is exciting to see that you have chosen an entrepreneur that has a product, right? They've got a concept or maybe a finished product that hasn't sold, but they really believe in it, and maybe they're bringing it to you to have you to reassess it and help them think it through. We
do work with some customers that already have the product and are trying to kind of do the backwards piece of it, trying to get the part from the front up to the product. That's more challenging, obviously, but we do have customers in that realm. And it's not necessarily just for the entrepreneur. We do work with established companies that already have established product lines, and maybe they're trying to open a new product line and they're trying to break out of the mold because they see maybe their market share deteriorating, or they're trying to open a new market that maybe they're not an expert in. So they work with us to establish that. That's still an entrepreneurial endeavor for an existing company. So it doesn't just have to be somebody who's starting from ground zero. Yeah, absolutely. Incredible impact that you have the potential, right, for realizing here in the community, which is phenomenal. I'm curious, what accountability measures do you really have in place that will help the individual to continue to move forward? I mean, I think you're talking about product, or you're talking about planning, right? And so there's got to be different milestones as we're talking about this. So just curious, how do we hold the person accountable? How do you hold them accountable and help them? Well, to begin with, that's one of the measures of, is this person serious? So when they come into the very first meeting with us, or maybe the first or second, we give them a series of things to do. And one of them is very important. For example, we want to make sure when the entrepreneur or the person heads down this path, there's no going back. So we say you need to establish a corporation if you don't already have one, and you need to irrevocably transfer all rights of your idea to that corporation. Oh, interesting. So what that does is that says, I'm in. And if this doesn't work out, there's no way out. This company owns it. Because if somebody's going to invest in it, they want to make sure the company owns it. So that's establishing value day one. And then we talk about establishing an accounting system, establishing processes. So to begin with, you're kind of putting that infrastructure in place and establishing value. If they go away and they're still enamored in the idea and they don't do any of that, now we'll help to a certain extent, but to a certain extent, those are the steps that somebody who's serious has got to do on their own. So that's the first measure. And as we walk through, we do have regular meetings. We establish schedules, production schedules, design schedules, and we work with the customer all the way through the production, and even as well as sales ramp-up schedules. Don't expect anybody to go from 0 to 1,000 units in a week. So we have a ramp-up schedule and show how that cost burn down of the production cost is happening.
You know, you talked about some of the kinds of investments that are involved. Can you give me a sense of timeline? I mean, some of these things, it sounds like to me that, you know, you're talking a year or two just to help a person take it from concept to market.
It depends on the product, but a typical cycle is no less than a year from the start of the corporation to the product, which also drives another important element. When you're creating a product, and I've gone through this with many, many folks, we first think of things that we need today. Usually by the time you can design that and get it to market, somebody else is already out there with you. So we really challenge people to try to think of products that are going to be needed in 2 to 5 or even 10 years. That creates the roadmap so that when they go out with that first product, they're already thinking of the second product and the third product that revenue is going to finance, so that they get ahead of the curve. They start getting into market areas that are not treading on heavily already.
Okay.
And they can now start gaining market share in their product offerings. We even look at feature roadmaps. So maybe to begin with, they come out with a set of features that are similar to other things that are out there, but as they move on, they're adding features or adding things in that are new and innovative.
That's incredible. What do you find the most challenging about doing this?
Switching from one to the other is really the most challenging thing for us. They're so broad and so different. Every one of them is exciting, and we love every one that we work with. But you might be having a meeting about a very technical, detailed item, and then the next thing you're in a marketing meeting, or you might find me in the back casting some parts in plastic or 3D printing something, just so we can hold it in our hand and look at it and see what the customer is going to feel when they see that product.
The epitome of project management, it sounds like, because you have X number of customers or partners, depending on the way you look at it, and all these different phases that they're in.
Yes. Yeah. If they were all in the same phase at the same time, it would be a little easier, but they're not.
That really stretches. So what size of team do you have internally, Tim, that helps you and supports these individuals? How do you approach that?
We have about 8 to 10 folks, and we do. One of the main things that I wanted to do when, as part of Wild Manta, is I want to involve the community. So we did go out and find experts in intellectual property. So that's a very specific domain. And what we had is we had a conversation. We said, these are the types of customers that we're dealing with. So when you come in, understand that you have a very specific section of the overall timeline that you need to work. Work with us, work with the customer. We're going to do it in a consistent way so that we build value in their company. So the intellectual property element, the upfront branding element, the industrial design, we work with them on that. So the idea is we're working with companies in the area in a way that's consistent and repetitive, and we typically meet together as a team so that we can have that consistent front to the customer, versus going, a lot of times you can go to a half a dozen different companies or a dozen different companies. Each one of them has their own agenda. Each one of them has their own desire to do business with you, not understanding that they need to get in and get out so that you can continue down the path. The main thing is to just understand the product, understand their position in the product, and then try to develop a plan to see if it works out.
Yeah, make sure it really fits. And thinking about all the engineers that I've worked with over the years, my 30-some-year plus career, I've had a lot of them talk about different, ideas, but I've rarely seen them execute it. And I wonder if they're not stuck in that phase of, I got the ideas, but I really don't know where to go. They're overwhelmed with how to get it, the idea of getting it to actual market.
They are. Engineers in particular have a plethora of ideas. They have a lot. What they don't have a lot of time is the confidence in that idea or the marketing backup from that idea to believe that it will actually sell. Engineers by their nature create things.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge of the engineer. The marketing person, on the other hand, the natural salesperson, has the idea, and they do not have the focus to stay with it long enough before the next shiny object comes up, and that's the best idea. So it varies from the strength of the person.
Well, I'm looking forward to being able to stop by Wild Manta and see some of the products that you've got on display there, and just in the background, just explore and learn a little bit more about what you're doing and how you're really adding value to the community.
Certainly. We do have product displays of most of the products that we have that are on market, and as more come to market, we'll be putting them out. And what we also want to show in that process, at the consent of the owner of the product, is we show them the stages the product went through.
Oh, that's interesting.
So you'll see the first mock-ups, you'll see the first prototypes of the product, so that you can tell that it didn't just all of a sudden appear one day as finished.
And this helps people also that have the concept. Maybe they can stroll in, take a look, and just come in and take a look around and check things out themselves.
Absolutely.
That'd
Anytime.
be great. Well, Tim, thank you so much. This has been a very interesting conversation. You added the scope of service and the work that you're doing is just very impressive. So thank you for being my guest and coming and sharing with me how you are helping to create sustainable companies in the community.
Thank you.
Well, on my behalf of my guest and everyone here on the set of Your Career, thank you for watching, and remember, be career happy.
More information about this program is available online at millermediagroup.org.